What is a scripture reference? You may know, you may not know. You may know what it is, but not know that it's called a scripture reference. That's a piece of scripture, sentence, or line, piece of literature in the Bible that we are referring to, hence reference. And it's scripture reference because the Bible's full of scripture, full of sentences, full of words. So things like when you hear John 3:16 or Jeremiah 29:11 or Psalm 119:105, those are all scripture references because they're referring to a specific scripture line in the Bible. How do we find that line in the Bible? Scripture reference! John 3:16. John is the book. 3 is the chapter. 16 is the verse that you find it in. So we're used to books and we're used to chapters because that's a normal thing that we're used to if you still read books. Some people don't anymore. Think of it as I love going through Chronicles of Narnia once a year, normally Christmas time. There's 7 books in the Chronicles of Narnia. Okay, and so 7 books. Each book has its own chapter. So I flip open to Prince Caspian. It's the 4th book in the series, and it is chapter 8 is what I'm in. It's how they left the island. So this is when the Pevensey kids have been brought back to Narnia. It's thousands of years later, and they're sitting in Cair Paravel, which is now an island, and it tells the journey how they leave and go meet up with the rest of the story. So it's still kind of early in the story-ish. So if you've read the book, you know what's happening. If you don't, you know that I referenced Prince Caspian. You know that I referenced Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, chapter 8, and I talked about a little bit about something. Maybe that's how you feel at church sometimes, because the pastor's talking about verses, and you're like, get it? It's making a point. I see what you're kind of saying, but, like, I don't get it, because I don't, And that's one of those things that's, we got to read the Bible to understand. So if we don't know those events that the pastor's talking about or referencing, I like taking notes. Like, sometimes they'll just, like, blurt out, like, Isaiah 45:4. Okay, and then they keep going, and you're like, what was I supposed to do with that? I just write it down, look it up later. Sometimes the brain gets distracted, and I'll go look it up, and they're off talking about something else, and I don't know what they're talking about. But you look it up, and then you go, oh, that's the context for the point that they're trying to make. And it's super helpful to know not only just, like, the verse, but, like, what is the purpose of that book? What is the events going on before and after that verse? Because then that might help me understand what the speaker's trying to convey to me. I think one way of thinking about it to kind of help make it understandable is thinking of TV series. So The Office, season 2, last episode, Casino Night. What happens? Jim finally professes his love to Pam. They kiss. And it ends, and you have to wait to season 3. And, I mean, you don't, because you live in a world with streaming platforms that can watch it back to back now. Some of us had to wait to see what was going to happen. Or the episode in Friends, the one where Ross and Rachel are trying to get the couch up and pivot. Like, those are iconic things. You talk about that. Even if you haven't seen Friends or The Office, you know that those things happen because they're just like, you see those scenes everywhere. It's kind of like seeing John 3:16 at the games. You know it exists, but maybe you haven't read the whole book of John. You haven't read the whole Bible. So the Bible is full of 66 books, right? We have an Old Testament, we have a New Testament. We have 39 books in the Old Testament, we have 27 books in the New Testament. But it is one continuous story. So you find the book reference, you go to that book, go to the chapter, and then you find the verse. And then you can read what's going on that was given to you. But I think another way to, like, connect that is if you have ever seen any of the Marvel movies. We have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I think we're in phase 4. I don't know. I gave up after Endgame because it literally pulled my heart out and smashed it. And I emotionally could not recover because I spent 11 long years tracking with them. But that's neither here nor there. But the point is, you have phase 1, you have the originals, you have Hulk, Iron Man, Captain America. Like, you're seeing all of these foundational pieces coming together. You get to the first Avengers, and you get into phase 2, and then you get more Avengers, and you get phase 3, and you're seeing, like, these different things. And then you get to the climax, I think, of Infinity War and Endgame. And they keep going on. But it's one continuous story. They have standalone films, right? But it's one continuous story. So you have Captain America, and then you have Winter Soldier. That's one continuous story. But then you put it in line with the whole Marvel franchise, and that is still part of a continuous story that makes this large, beautiful story that we watch that takes us on a journey, and it's great. That's the Bible. The Bible works that way too. We have the Old Testament, which is before Jesus came, and it's all of these things from creation and how the Israelite people came to be and what that looked like, and going from here and there in different places, coming in and out of slavery, in and out of exile. They have their kingdom, they don't have their kingdom. They have their kingdom, and then they have the temple, but they don't go back to a monarchy system. But then Jesus comes, and we have the New Testament. We have his life and death and resurrection, and how does that inspire people? And so the Bible is one continuous story, like Marvel. Maybe Marvel's more like the Bible, but not. We can get into all the comparisons in a different time. There's the different books that are standalones. Those would be like the movies, right? And they tell us about different points of history that happen all along the Israelites' journey. And then you have phase 1, you have phase 2. I would say we're probably living in phase 3 of the Bible, if you want to get that technical. But it's one story, 66 books. You've got 2 very distinct time zones. And so when we use scripture references, bringing it back around, don't you worry, I got you. When we use scripture references, it's telling us about this point in the history and what's happening then, and what's God saying to the people, or what were the people doing, and what's going on. And there's things in there that benefit us now, because you always learn from history, so you don't repeat it. And yet we keep repeating it. But the Bible is the history book. It is 66 books, 2 different parts. We use scripture references to help us narrow down, because it spans thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history. And so we use the scripture reference to help us A, find what we're looking for, B, it's like, oh, this is just something that really stands out to me. And it's a beautiful thing, because it's a really big book. I mean, you look at it and you can get some really thin ones, and then you have some other ones. I don't have, it's over there, but it's too far to reach. It's, you get some heftier ones, and those things have commentary and stuff in it, but it's how do you find what you're looking for? And it's really important to read through all of it at least once in your life. And if you've done that, that's amazing. But we use scripture references to help us find what scripture we're referring to. The end. Hope that helps.